Hello, welcome everyone. My name is Suchith Anand and I am from the Global Open Data for Agriculture and Nutrition. Thank you for joining today's GODAN Capacity Development webinar, and I want to welcome you all to this webinar and also to our GODAN working group on capacity development. Global Open Data for Agriculture and Nutrition supports the proactive sharing of open data to make information about agriculture and nutrition available, accessible, and usable to deal with the urgent challenge of ensuring global food security. GODAN's Capacity Development Working Group works to promote open data, knowledge, increase awareness of ongoing open data initiatives, innovations, and good practices. We also promote capacity development and diversity of open data users for a more effective accessibility, use, engagement, and understanding of open data. We have a very active mailing list, so I request all interested to join our mailing list. So you can see the details on our screen now, and just put your details and welcome and join the mailing list and join the discussions for this capacity development working group. So today's webinar will be on GODAN Action project, which is a program launched by the UK's Department of International Development. It brings together agriculture and nutrition specialists and open data experts and will support GODAN by building people's capacity to engage with open data. And I'm very happy to have two excellent speakers for us today, Rob Lokers from the Wageningen University and Chipo Msengezi from CTA, who will present the GODAN Action projects. So first we will start with Rob Lokers, and I want to introduce Rob Lokers quickly. He's a project manager and research infrastructures at Altera at Wageningen University. He has long years experience in information systems development in scientific and commercial environments. His expertise is in the ICT and data science in various domains, from agriculture to food security to environment. He also got expertise in research infrastructures, knowledge technology, and agro-environmental modeling. Rob's focus is on co-creating innovative knowledge infrastructures and applications that advance the level of agro-environmental applications by exploiting the possibilities of open data, big data, and the semantic web. He has led many projects and work packages in large international research projects and service contracts, especially in research infrastructure initiatives. And currently, Rob is coordinating, among others, the GODAN Action project, which focuses on achieving impact by engaging with open data in agriculture and nutrition. So we are very happy to have Rob today, and I'm going to give the invite Rob to share his inputs for this webinar. Welcome, Rob.
Thanks for attending this webinar. Suchith already gave an introduction to me, so I won't go into detail to that. In GODAN Action, I'm doing part of the coordination work, and I also am leading the impact innovation stream in GODAN Action. GODAN Action is, let's say, the research stream of the GODAN initiative, which is funded by DFID. And, well, even if it's a research initiative, in this particular work, we also want to be very practical. I'll come back to that in the presentation. First of all, I'll give you a short outline. I'll tell something about the mission and activities of GODAN Action, a little bit about the project approach and how we try to achieve impact with open data. Then I'll go shortly into thematic topics, which is, let's say, one of the things we'll be working on in the project to concentrate on specific domains, and I'll give some more details about the thematic topic that we're working on this year, which is about open weather data. And I'll finalize with a call for co-development, but I'll tell you something more when I come to that. Well, first of all, about the mission of GODAN Action. We are, well, striving for effective use of open data for agriculture and nutrition, and we think it's important that we work on engagement with open data, like I said, in a practical manner. So we don't only want to do theoretical research, but also want to put our research into practice. And on a knowledgeable manner, so we want to support open data users with knowledge about interoperability, with capacity building activities to bring them forward in using open data in their activities. So it's about research, but it's first of all about helping stakeholders working with open data to achieve impact. Very shortly, GODAN Action focuses on 3 focal areas. The first one is the use of standards and interoperability. So we want to bring this field forward, trying to also work out specific standardization and interoperability issues on our thematic topics, and supporting communities in those areas to use open data and to use standards to better work on co-development in that area. We work on impacts. So there's a specific work stream on impact evaluation where we try to bring forward let's say the methods for evaluating impact of initiatives where open data plays a role. And the third one kind of brings together all the knowledge in the project in capacity building activities. So we're also going to do a lot of work on that. Approach of the project, it's quite clear now already, I think, that we have this end user focus, so trying to help end users in open data and helping them achieve impact with open data. We also have an adaptive approach, so we try to have let's say a learning cycle into our own work. I'll explain a little bit more of that when I come to the project setup. But essentially, we deploy our activities, we evaluate them, we try to learn from that and improve our activities in the next round of activities over the coming years. What we think is an important thing is a knowledge chain from data to products. If you look at the right side of the screen, you see a pyramid, which might be familiar to you already, but I still explain it a little bit. Because open data, in fact, is, let's say, more or less a primary building block of a lot of things above it. Usually you say you take data and you use all kinds of tools and knowledge to scale up the data to information by adding meaning, and then also to knowledge, for instance, through decision support systems, by using scenarios, by using integrated models to generate new knowledge. And essentially, the endpoint is, of course, the user domain, where end users like policy and decision makers, or in some cases, end user information intermediaries, all kinds of stakeholders are going to use this knowledge somehow to, well, to create something, to do business with, to make regulations, to do policy. So that's actually the endpoint of our knowledge chain. And so we don't only look at open data, but also at the process of, let's say, putting added value to open data. So it really adds to the business process of end users. Last important point is innovation. We see open data as a source of innovation, as something that can create additional value to things that might already exist, but because you add open data, you create something extra and you create added value. A little bit more about the activities. Like I said, standardization. First of all, about improving interoperability of data. We want to learn our stakeholders about which standards are available in different fields of work. We also want to provide support and services that use standards to let's say, achieve more interoperability and to allow people to more easily work together using open data. That's the first thing. The next thing is developing, well, we say improved tools for impact assessment, because in principle we want to build on the tools that are already available and want to, let's say, adapt them in such a way that are usable for open data initiatives. Another point here is that we also want to analyze the barriers that currently hinder the full potential of open data. It's clear that in different environments are different conditions and different barriers that might, let's say, make it less easy to develop things with open data. Next part is capacity building. We develop training courses, helping our stakeholders to, let's say, understand open data, understand how to work with open data, both as a data provider, a data user, and an end user of open data. Yeah, we see open data as a solution, not only as a theoretical thing to work on, but something that can be applied in practice. And because of that, we thought already at the beginning of the project that it was good to work along what we call thematic topics. So specific application domains which have specific use cases where you can actually practically put our knowledge into practice. And in our inception phase, we had 6 topics where we thought there would be interest to work on open data, and we had an evaluation of that. We had some experts evaluating those topics, and in the end 3 came out as being, let's say, at least to our evaluators, the most relevant ones of those 6. And that's the ones that we are going to work on in the coming years. So these are domains where the impact of open data is foreseen to be substantial, where there are already developments and where there's interest from stakeholders, and where we think we can put our research into practice and achieve some impact. So these topics are climate and weather data. I have to correct that because it's actually only weather data. I'll come back to that later. Support to land data sharing, so looking at land data and how land data is used by stakeholders. Now we can improve the situation by opening up data and using that open data. And we have the domain of nutrition data, and specifically nutrition in relation to the Global Nutrition Report. Essentially, this is the setup of our project, and as you can see, we have an inception phase, and we have some steps after that inception phase. You can also see where we are at the moment. We are in month 12, so halfway, the second block in this setup. In the inception phase, we have done a lot of scoping work, among others, selecting those thematic topics and setting up a lot of activities. Right now, we are in the first year where we look at a specific topic of weather data. And then we have a second period where we look at 2 other topics, nutrition and land data. You can also see that it's iterative, so we adapt our knowledge and our tools in the weather data team this year, but of course we'll have an evaluation around the end of this year to improve things and to, let's say, learn from it and improve our work in the next stages of the project. So there's an iteration into that. Well, we also have research, uptake and monitoring evaluation, which runs a year longer than the other tasks of the project. It seems a little bit like it's only in the last year if you look at this block diagram, but that's not how you should see it. I mean, research, uptake and monitoring and evaluation is something that's integrated over the whole project. It's just here because we run this activity for 1 year more, so we can also see the effects of our work after we have finalized it. So a little bit more about the 3 focal areas, standards and interoperability. First of all, a lot of work has already been done. We have developed, for instance, a map of standards for food and agriculture. It's already available on the internet, and you can see the link in this sheet. So that's something where you can explore all kinds of standards and interoperability issues, and you can see, well, if there's something of use for your specific domain. This year we're also exploring specifically, of course, standardization and standards for weather data. So we also have a specific section for that. Other than that, we work on gap analysis, so we don't only make an inventory of existing standards, we also try to see what the gaps are, and we try to also deliver support to use cases by doing pilots in this area. The image you see under the text is, by the way, a screenshot of the maps of standards, the map of standards, which you will also see if you follow this URL that's mentioned. The second work stream is about impact evaluation, which is Like I said, the basis will be existing tools and existing methods, but it's clear that they should be adapted. A lot of impact evaluation methods are not specifically looking at open data, and if they are, then they usually are very targeted to specific areas or specific fields. So we need to do quite some work to adapt those to be able to be applied in our initiatives that we are going to look at in our thematic topics. So we also have to apply them to specific application domains, and we also have to take into account local boundary conditions. Of course, if you look at, well, let's again take the weather data theme. If you look at different projects or initiatives in different countries, then you will see totally different, let's say, political environments, totally different open data ecosystems, sometimes very poor, sometimes very rich. So let's say that the whole environment and the conditions around, let's say, being able to achieve impact with open data are an important issue here to take into account in this impact evaluation also. It's not only about developing methods, but it's of course also about applying and testing these methods, again, according to this learning cycle. So we're going to apply those methods this year in weather data initiatives to see if they work and what the actual gaps and issues are with it, and we'll improve it and apply it again in the other thematic topics in coming years. So the third stream is about capacity building, and I will be very short on that bit because the next speaker, Chipo, will also say a little bit about that. We're developing capacity building material, well, about, let's say, generally open data and the use of open data, but also specifically towards the topics that we're working on. So there will be examples of the specific domains that we look at. We're working both at an online curriculum and on offline course material, and regarding trainings, we will have online courses, but also face-to-face trainings with a focus on train the trainer. And then we have monitoring and evaluation and research uptake as an integrated activity over the whole project. We will have to do our own performance monitoring as a dedicated activity. So, one of the more common things is that you develop a theory of change on a log frame. In this case, our log frame is combined with the log frame of the GODAN Secretariat. It's an integrated log frame. But on the more detailed level, on the project level, we also have a monitoring and evaluation framework where we have dedicated performance monitoring throughout the project. And also after the finalization of our, let's say, focal area activities. And the other thing is research uptakes, and of course it takes a lot of effort to do dissemination and communication about our activities to be able to have it, let's say, picked up by stakeholders. One of the things we are doing is a specific GODAN Action section on the GODAN site, which is currently available. The URL is in this slide. So you can take a look at what's there. It's still quite small, but it will grow throughout the project. Just to give you a little more of an impression of what we do on thematic topics, I would like to go into the weather data topic, which we're working on this year a little bit, so you get a little bit more of an impression what kind of things we will do in this topic. Yeah, like I said, it's our focus topic for 2017, and well, the topic has received quite some interest last years. There's a lot of things going on regarding weather data and services that, let's say, are towards smallholders in developing countries also. But I think most prominent examples are still in the Western world. We have the NOAA case where there's been data released in the US, where a lot of, let's say, business is formed around open data. In Europe, we also have the Copernicus Climate Service, which is now being set up, which, let's say, does a lot of open data on climate and weather, which is still under development, but where we expect that there will be a lot of, let's say, activities, also business activities on top of this this whole data service. So we also see a lot of initiatives now being set up in developing countries. In the Netherlands, we have the Geo for Agriculture and Water initiative, for instance, which focuses on building applications for smallholders, and some of them also include weather data. But apart from that, there are a lot of funders that currently fund initiatives in developing countries which include somehow weather data. Yeah, of course, it's clear that weather data is a strategic asset to farmers. Of course, yeah, weather data, weather patterns are currently changing. And we can already see that growing seasons get less predictable, so it's getting harder for farmers to, let's say, rely on their experience from the past, maybe. And we should also see higher risk profiles for farming and food production as a consequence. So, let's say, knowing about the weather, and especially for operational management, weather forecasts and weather patterns is very relevant for farm management and also for people advising farmers. So there's a thing of securing and improving yields and income if you have better information about weather, and that includes, let's say, the short-term weather, but also maybe longer-term climate projections. Then you can better anticipate on things and improve your yields and income. It will also give you easier access to resources and capital. If your farm management is all right, then let's say financiers and insurance companies are probably more eager to work with you. We also see, of course, a lot of microfinance and insurance institutions that use weather data in their business. And in the end, of course, it's about local and regional food security in general. The aspect that we focus on this year is specifically, let's say, co-creation between farm organizations, business, and government. And we're mainly looking at, let's say, how services can be developed on top of open data for smallholders. Okay, so there are some specific issues with open weather data, however. Because, well, first of all, most weather data is currently not open yet, especially in developing countries. I mean, if we look at specific region and countries, we see inconsistent regimes with regard to open data and specifically weather data. We see a lot of restrictions still on use and protective behavior, both from, let's say, governments and weather services who are usually under the government, and also from businesses if let's say weather services are privatized. There's often cost recovery pricing, so yeah, people at least trying to get their cost back if they provide weather data. Another issue in some countries is also that governments are tending to mirror, let's say, products and services that could be developed by the private sector. So somehow creating unfair competition and making it harder for business to create something with open data. The other thing is that the quality of available weather data, and especially of, let's say, short-term forecasts, which are most relevant for operational management, the quality is usually varying. I mean, there's a resolution issue where you can see that there's a lot of very low resolution data available on a global scale from different sources, but where you also really need local and more, let's say, fine-grained information on the local level, and that's usually quite hard to acquire. There's a problem of data gaps. You can see in a lot of regions that, let's say, the delivery of weather data is not consistent. Well, all kinds of, let's say, causes for that, but I mean, it's just that if there's met stations available, then they're not always working continuously, and there's also measuring errors. So there's a lot of issues around weather data, which on one hand are, let's say, a barrier, but also there are solutions for some of those issues. So that's also something we want to do to work on, let's say, a better understanding of how you can work even with, let's say, weather data of less quality. So we focus on information and service intermediaries there. Like I said, that's maybe also a little bit specific about this thematic topic in GODAN Action. Usually when we look at the work that's been done on open data, then it's on the higher, let's say, the government and policy levels a lot, and it doesn't really go a lot into how businesses can work with open data and how they can create, let's say, ecosystems with open data. So we try to look at how service and information intermediaries could use open data and provide added value service to smallholders. So that means combining agronomic knowledge with data and data processing to provide services. It means either working directly with farmers or, well, maybe in most cases also indirectly through farmer organizations or through microfinance and insurance providers. We think, well, capacity building is key here. A lot of issues about weather data, about how to find open weather data and where to use weather data that's not open to achieve your goals. There's interoperability issues that need to be solved, and we think we can also provide some good practices and have, let's say, those service intermediaries create new opportunities with this additional knowledge. So, and the last thing, but not the least thing, I think, by looking at this specific level of information service intermediaries, we could also, let's say, provide some stories of impact, which we could take to national government and weather services to, let's say, do some advocacy to also open up weather data more than they do now. So we think there's also, let's say, something to be brought to the higher level and to support, let's say, the provision of open data from the examples that we find and that we work on. Lastly, some specific activities on this in GODAN Action. I already mentioned that this map of standards that we're developing is currently focused also on exploring available standards for weather data and helping stakeholders, supporting stakeholders to help these facilities, for instance, with working with open data, making it more interoperable. It's one thing. We will evaluate some open weather data-based projects, create stories of impact, like I said, for also for advocacy, but for learning and inspiration in other communities and initiatives. Capacity building activities, of course, where we will have a more general curriculum, but also specific references to weather data, case studies, to examples, to best practices coming from our work in the previously mentioned activities. We also intend to set up communities of practice. So what we'll try to do also for the weather data theme is try to set up a community of practice around, well, different initiatives. And also do some advocacy for, let's say, promoting open weather data ecosystems that might help creation of co-development and a viable workspace for co-development in specific regions. So that brings me to, let's say, sort of a call for action for all of you. Of course, we cannot do this alone, and we seek also to work with networks that are active in one of our thematic topics. So for now, this is currently focusing on weather data, but like I said, next year we will also focus on land data and nutrition data. And we want to collectively work on achieving impact through our work. So we are looking for partners of our initiative that might be interested in working together with us to bring this impact of open data in general and open data in the specific thematic topics that we work on in specifically to bring that forward. So yeah, the call for action is, well, if you are interested and you think you would like to do something together with us, with GODAN Action, you can always mention that. So my email address is in this latest slide. If you are interested in working together, let us know. There's also, again, the URL to the GODAN Action section on the GODAN site. So I'd like to thank you all for your attention now, and not sure if we'll do the questions first or we'll go into the next presentation. I understand. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Rob. I want to introduce Chipo Msengezi from CTA, who is going to do our second presentation. Chipo is a project coordinator at CTA, and she is working in the GODAN Action project, where she oversees the development and implementation of activities with focal area 3 of the project, which looks into the building capacity and diversity of open data users. Before joining CTA, Chipo worked in Africa to build capacity among the research and education communities in the latest information tools and advocate for the adoption of new technologies that drive development in Africa. So thank you very much, Chipo. So please go ahead with your presentation.
Thank you, Suchith. Okay, so I'm going to talk a bit about the work that we are looking at under Work Package 3, which is looking at capacity development. Okay, so I'm going to link it to some of the objectives of this working group. So some of you are already members of the working group and would know, but some of you I'm sure are new, and this will remind you of what the objectives are when this working group was created. So this working group is looking to promote open data knowledge. We want to increase awareness of initiatives that are taking place to do with open data, innovations in open data, good practices in open data, and advocacy, advocating for more efforts to open up data in our respective countries, in our regions. So this is the purpose of this working group, and the work that we are doing within GODAN Action under Work Package 3 aligns with the objectives of this group. So the focal area that we are going to talk about is the focal area 3, building capacity of agriculture and nutritional open data users. And the focus in this work package is really to build the capacity of a diverse set of users of open data and producers of open data, to give them the capacity to understand what open data means, how it can be used to solve the challenges in agriculture and nutrition. So during the inception phase of the project, we worked together with many stakeholders to come up with a capacity development action plan. And this capacity development action plan is a document that was developed to assess the needs, first of all, of users, of producers, open data. What needs do they have in terms of capacity, in terms of training, and then to propose initiatives that can address those gaps that we identified. So from that sort of work, that assessment work and mapping work that we did, we came up with an action, with a capacity development action plan. And it's from this plan that we draw the activities of Work Package 3, which include supporting this working group on capacity development. So GODAN Action within Work Package 3 wants to support this working group, first of all, to identify what the needs are, what the challenges are, what the barriers are for open data usage. And firstly, we do that using assessments. So for example, we carried out a capacity assessment survey, which was sent out to the GODAN community, GODAN's members and partners, as well as the project partners. And some of you, I'm sure, probably participated in this assessment. And we got some interesting data out of it. For example, these two areas. For example, we had 58% of the respondents saying that they had not received any training on open data. Although 93% of them actually said that they do work with data in their everyday work, but none of them, well, 58% of them really had not had any sort of training in open data. We were also able to identify the priority areas when it comes to capacity needs among the respondents. So they selected to them what were their priority areas, and among them, the top were data management, 68%, data access, data quality, and data visualization. So this assessment informed the plan that we developed for building capacity. Secondly, we were able to map the existing training initiatives that are taking place all over the world to do with open data. because what we want to do is not to duplicate, but to enhance and add on to what already was existing. And from that activity, which also was in collaboration with this working group, we had members inputting what they knew of initiatives that are taking place onto our mapping exercise. And these are just a few of the ones we identified who already are running initiatives in open data. Among them, Open Data Institute, Open Knowledge Society, World Bank. So all these already have some sort of training that they are doing, some sort of capacity building activities, be it face-to-face or online. So out of that, we actually have a resource that we can actually draw on when we are developing our material. And I think even as it's actually something that an output from the project, which perhaps could be used later as a reference point or a portal for others who are interested in learning in open data to reference them to the various initiatives that are taking place. Okay, so the next area is increasing awareness of open data amongst the end users of these training initiatives. So what we have planned in our capacity building plan is to carry out several training events and online trainings intakes. We are developing an online course curriculum which we are going to run as a MOOC. Then we are focusing on face-to-face training workshops as well. And for the face-to-face workshops, the model that we want to use is the trainer of trainer models to ensure that some of these skills are cascaded down, to allow organizations who are already engaged in training activities to adopt some of this material and embed it in their training initiatives. And then we have also these webinars that are taking place through the GODAN Working Group for Capacity Development. So, for example, there, the MOOC, we are currently going through the curriculum development process, and we plan, hopefully, by the autumn to have our first, a pilot, which we hope to engage you, being the stakeholders, and you being involved already in capacity development, to pilot some of the content that we are going to run in the MOOC, and then we will have a full online course for that. And then we have the face-to-face training component. So we began that last year during the inception phase, where we wanted to trial the content that we had at that time, to test it out, to see what feedback we got, what sort of refining we need to do to the existing material. So we ran 2 courses last year, one in Kenya and one in Ecuador, together with our partners, Land Portal, and we got some good feedback from those workshops, which have continued to inform our capacity development plan. So, for example, some feedback talked about the level at which you pitch your courses if they are face-to-face. So depending on the audience, it needs to start at a very basic level. This is what we learned, for example, in the journalist training and the policymakers training. So there's a need, first of all, to create awareness on these resources for you to be able to move on to actually building capacity. Okay, then we have the repository of learning materials. So this is something that we are trying to still build up. We have some resources already that we have shared through the D Groups platform, the D Groups library, which some of you are already a member of and can access a few training resources there. Hopefully, in the near future, we'll have a platform dedicated for learning where we'll have all the learning resources in one place. At the moment, you can look on D Group's library, you can look on the GODAN Action website. There's a tab on the website that looks at resources, and there's a number of resources there from our partners, from the project itself, where you can also get information, where you can get resources for your own training initiatives at this moment that we are. So for the curriculum, this is just an explanation of how we came to develop the curriculum and what sort of target groups we were looking at. So with our partners IDS, they helped us to identify 7 groups of what they call what are called personas, which are really groups of people who have certain motivations or expectations when they receive a training on open data. So from those 7, we grouped them into 3 groups for which we will be focusing our content on. So as you can see, it goes from researcher, NGO, the private sector, policymakers, farmers, intermediaries, extension workers. So we group them into intermediaries, policymakers, and then a group for researchers and scientists. So looking at intermediaries here, we are looking at people who really take the information, take the data, repackage it, turn it into something meaningful, turn it into some form of information that means something to users. For example, you have your extensionists who give advice to the farmers. Those are a target group. ICT workers, your journalists who use data, who need visualization skills to be able to give the information in a manner which is understandable. And then we've got the group policy makers. So there we've got your administrators and project makers, the people who are making decisions. They are a target group on their own. And then we've got the researchers and scientists who we want to encourage to open up their data, to share their data. So from that meeting where we identified the personas, we also then invited different stakeholders to come up with a curriculum that provided a good understanding of what open data is, what the principles are for the various users, from the producers to the users. So this was all put into 5 units. Unit 1 being open data principles, where you have an introduction really to what open data is and what the ethics are when you are dealing with open data and what the issues are around privacy and all that. Then we have the unit on using open data. Okay, so we have and then we have a unit on making data open, a unit on exchanging open data, and unit 5 lastly talking about intellectual property and copyright. So the idea is that this would be the core of the training curriculum, and then we would have 3 learning paths depending on what type of user you are, or what type of audience you are taking this course. So depending whether you're an intermediary or you're a policymaker or you are a researcher or a scientist, you would take certain modules of this course. You wouldn't have to do the entire course. You would take what is relevant for you. So we are also developing a set of use cases that are relevant for each of those target audiences. As for the face-to-face training, so like I mentioned earlier, our online curriculum, we are preparing that for this autumn. Our first training event for this year will be coming up on the 19th of July at the Africa Open Data Conference, where we are hoping to start to establish a network of trainers. So if you are going to be in Ghana, it would be good for us to engage and discuss more on the project, or how you would like to get involved with the project. Then we've got here the newly launched web page for GODAN Action. So you are welcome to visit the page and learn more of what we are doing, learn more of the events that are coming up. And so I think I'll end here and encourage you to get involved. Inform us if you have initiatives, if you've got training events that are taking place where you think we could align what we are doing with your event. Let us know, give us feedback on the outputs and the activities that we're engaging in. Visit the website, and also communicate with Suchith. Send him your ideas if you have topics that you would like touched on in these webinars. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Chipo and Rob, for your excellent presentations. Thank you very much, Chipo and Rob, for your excellent presentation. And now we have some time for questions. And thanks for those who have already sent questions. So let me just share these questions with Rob and you and Chipo, so you can answer it. So our first question is from, let me just look at it. First question is from Haptamu Kino, who is asking, when we think about access to open data, there are many things to consider. For example, the role of old media like TV and radio to reach farmer. Thanks, Tamu, for this question. I think this is a very relevant question. And I can tell you from my experience in India, this is very important because a lot of, especially smallhold farmers, they are in rural areas. They might not have access to these technologies. So still they are reliant on these the old technologies like radio for, especially if you look at weather data. So, Rob, do you have any thoughts or ideas on this question?
Yes, I think I fully agree with the statement that was made here. If we look at, let's say, for instance, the weather data theme, where we're concentrating on those information intermediaries, this is a very broad group, which also includes, for instance, journalists who, let's say, translate open data with knowledge to newspapers or radio transmission. We also have ICT providers, and well, some of them might provide apps, but a lot of times they also, or maybe even exclusively provide, like, let's say, advice through SMS messages and not through, let's say, modern smartphone facilities. So yes, especially in this weather case theme, let's say our focus on our stakeholders is as broad as that, and we realize that to, let's say, bring the message to everyone, to all smallholders, we need those kinds of media also. Sure.
Thank you, Rob. Chipo, do you have any inputs on that, or any other ideas you want to add on that question?
Thanks, Suchith. Yes, TV and radio for sure are still very valid means when it comes to the farmer on the ground. And like Rob said, this is why we are focusing a lot on the intermediary, because they know their context, they know how to package the information for people ordinary people who are on the ground, who perhaps won't be able to access open data in its raw format and won't know what to do with it. Yes, so a big focus of our work is going to be with the intermediaries.
Great. No, that's very well put. Thanks very much, both of you. So the next question, so the second question is from Ndungu Kiamani, who is asking, would it be possible to add thematic topic for open plant conservation data?
Well, there's no definitive yes or no to that question. I guess formally, I mean, if we look at, let's say, the funding in GODAN Action at this point in time, we are bound to those 3 thematic topics that we selected. So that's, let's say, the more formal approach. I think, on the other hand, because we develop more generic knowledge and methods, it's of course possible to let's say, apply it to a new theme. And if there's enough, let's say, interest by the community, and we can, let's say, raise interest of funders, then we can, of course, also apply this to new themes, including, for instance, this one. So I would say within our current framework, it's quite hard to take it aboard, but we're, let's say, making our work in such a way that it is possible to take new themes aboard. So yes.
Thanks, Rob. That's very well answered. We have got another question that is coming from Sony D2EP, who is asking, how can we set out an integrated shared data infrastructures, SDI, for stakeholders to feed in data at different levels?
Well, that's a very technical question. Well, first of all, I think one of the things we are focusing on in the project is, let's say, data provision. And for instance, in the capacity building, there's quite some emphasis on, let's say, how to provide data and how to organize data management and things like that. So that might be, let's say, a first step into setting up something like this. But of course, it's always quite complex. I mean, shared data infrastructure is not about, not only about technology, at least. I mean, it's about capacity, like I said, but also about, let's say, organizing workflows around it. So it's not as simple as setting up technique. There's a lot more that you need, and hopefully we can give some grip on that with our capacity building activities. But essentially, of course, you need, let's say, the commitment of a lot of people and organizations in your environment to be able to set up such an environment. So that's I think one of the most important things. It's not just, I mean, with whatever we deliver in GODAN Action, it can be a support for that, but it's not the only thing you would need. I mean, it's mostly in the end about working together, about organizing stuff, about co-developing things.
Thanks, Rob. That's good. I have one quick question for Chipo, especially on the Open Data Conference you mentioned. Maybe for those of you who are interested, Chipo will send an email on the Open Data Conference details to the capacity development mailing list later. Is it okay, Chipo? So that people can then, if they are interested, can directly contact you?
Yes, okay. I will send more information on that. Yeah, just to tell you more about what we're trying to do. And
yes, so then other people who might be interested, who are hearing it for the first time, they want more details and want to engage more with that activity, can directly contact you. Oh, there's one more question that has come up.
People maybe on the group who will be going anyway, so it would be interesting if they are there, because we do have other panel sessions that we are organizing. So yes.
Yes. Thanks very much. So one question from Gabriel Okerfor, he was asking, the online training initiative is excellent to frog jump open data activities in many countries. It will be nice to pool relevant stakeholder representatives from different countries that will be trained to drive the training in their countries. Will there be any cost associated with participating in the training the trainer program? So
no, there will be no cost associated with being trained on any of the training programs that we do. If it's online particularly, this is going to be an open course for everyone who is willing to learn and is willing to also cascade the knowledge that they get. Particularly for the face-to-face trainer, we would like to engage more with people who already demonstrate that they are in some kind of training initiatives and would like to cascade the knowledge.
Thank you, Chipo. Gabriel, do join our mailing list. So you will be kept aware of all these programs, and then you can join these initiatives as you wish. So we have another question from Christo van Rooyen, who is asking, in South Africa, we have seen a rise in the adoption of smart devices like cellular phones, tablets, etc. How do you foresee open data being made readily available to the end user, farmers, via these types of devices? Thanks, Christo. That's a really very good question. Rob and Chipo?
Well, that's indeed a good question. I think, let's say, on the creation of added value as such, I mean, first of all, I think if you use cellular phones and smartphones and tablets, you have a lot more options to present your knowledge. I mean, if you compare it with, for instance, media like radio or SMS. So that's something to take into account. But in the end, I think, I mean, the part of, let's say, creating added value is still the same, in the sense that you take different kinds of data, combine them, let's say, combine them with knowledge, expert knowledge, and make something which is of added value to farmers. I think the main change is in how you present it, in visualization issues, and in let's say the option that you have to present more rich information to your end users through those devices. So I think ICT wise it requires different and other capabilities, but I'm not sure if it's so much different if you look at it from the open data perspective itself.
Right. Thank you, Rob. And Christ Van Rowen is asking another question on, are you also making capacity development programs available via these devices?
No, at this moment, we are not developing any training apps per se, but ODI does do that. If you know the Open Data Institute, they do have a mobile app for e-learning. So you can have a look at that for you, which is available offline.
Yeah.
So yeah.
In fact, there was a webinar from ODI previously, which is recorded, and you can look at that webinar, which is available in the GODAN channel. So it has all the details about that, the work that the colleagues at ODI are doing. So please feel free to look in their website, and you can get more information on that as well. So thank you very much for everyone for joining today's webinar. And on behalf of GODAN, I want to thank Rob and Chipo especially for their presentation today and their contributions. I also want to thank Silvana Suma and Chris Addison, who helped us with all the background facilities for this webinar. We welcome further discussions on this webinar topic and all other capacity development ideas in the community mailing list. So please join the GODAN Capacity Development mailing list. We thank you all again for joining our webinar and being part of the GODAN community. So if you have any ideas on future webinar topics or speakers, please do email us those details, and we will make sure we include your ideas for future topics. So we look forward to seeing you soon for our next webinar, and thanks again for today. Thank you. Bye for now.